she was nobody. Just another invisible girl serving wine to men who ruled the darkness of New York City. Her hands trembled as she approached the table, exactly as they were supposed to. Her eyes stayed down, exactly as they'd been trained. For 3 years, she'd been the perfect ghost seen, but never noticed, present, but never remembered. And then the most dangerous man in the world said 5 words that hadn't been spoken outside a Sicilian mountain village in 30 years. What he didn't know, what none of them knew, was that this trembling waitress understood every syllable, understood it in her bones, in her blood, in the screams that still woke her at midnight. Because Sophia Rossi was a lie. The girl pouring their $2,000 wine was someone else entirely. Someone who should have died in a fire 20 years ago. Someone whose family was massacred by the very man now sitting 3 feet away, swirling Barolo and testing the help. She should have stayed silent. Should have kept her head down and survived another day. But when Don Salvatore Moretti called her a sheep waiting for slaughter, in the ancient dialect her mother had whispered to her as a child, something inside her snapped. 5 words. That's all it took. 5 words in a dead language, and the room didn't just go silent, it froze. Because those words weren't a greeting, they were a death sentence. And only 3 people in that restaurant understood why. The dinner rush at Il Giglio was in full swing when the whispers started spreading through the kitchen like wildfire. The Morettis are coming, not Dante Moretti, the Harvard-educated prince. Guard, the king himself. Sophia's stomach twisted into knots. Don Salvatore Moretti, the man who'd ordered her entire family burned alive 20 years ago, while she hid in a closet, breathing smoke and praying to a god who didn't answer. Rossi, table 4 needs water now, Mr. Henderson barked, his face flushed with nervous sweat. Sophia filled the crystal pitcher, her hands trembling. This wasn't the practiced trembling of her waitress persona. This was real. The kind of fear that came from being 12 years old again, smelling her mother's perfume mixing with smoke and screaming. You're invisible, she told herself. He doesn't know you exist. He thinks you died in that fire. The front doors of Il Giglio opened like the gates of hell. Security entered, first 4 men in tailored suits, their eyes scanning for threats with professional precision. Then came Dante Moretti, devastating in a charcoal suit that fit like it had been grown on his body rather than tailored. He moved with predatory grace, bored with violence, but very, very good at it. But the room didn't freeze for Dante. It froze for the man behind him. Don Salvatore Moretti entered like an emperor returning to a conquered province. Late 60s, leaning heavily on an ebony cane, topped with a silver lion's head. Black fedora at a precise angle. Long's head, wool coat that looked like it had been maintained with religious care since the 1970s. His face was a roadmap of violence, scars crisscrossing his left cheek, a crooked nose broken and reset multiple times, deep lines carved by decades of ruthless decisions. His eyes were hidden behind tinted glasses, but Sophia could feel the weight of his gaze as it swept the room. This was a man who'd built an empire on bodies. The man who, 20 years ago, had personally ordered the execution of the entire Valenti family, men, women, and a 12-year-old girl, who had somehow, impossibly survived. Welcome, Don Moretti. Mr. Moretti, it is truly an honor. Henderson practically vibrated with nervous energy, bowing so low he looked like he might topple over. The table now, Dante cut him off with a raised hand. The procession moved past the line of servers. Sophia held her breath, staring at the floor, every muscle tensed. Don't look up, don't exist. The footsteps approached, passed, began to fade. Then they stopped, right in front of her. This one. Salvatore's voice was like gravel grinding in a cement mixer. She's shaking. Papa, let's sit down. The girl is just nervous. Dante's voice held a note of weary patience. Fear is good. Sophia felt a tap against her shoe. the silver lion's head of his cane, cold even through her leather. "Look at me, Bambina." Every survival instinct screamed at Sophia to run. But running would confirm suspicion. Running would end everything. So she became the frightened nobody. She looked up, widening her eyes until they were almost comically large, letting her lower lip tremble. "I'm so sorry, sir. I've never met anyone famous before. I'm sorry, I'm just nervous. I'm sorry." Salvatore stared at her for what felt like an eternity. Through those tinted glasses, she could feel him searching for something, looking past the dyed hair and baggy uniform, down to the blood, her veins, for one terrible moment. Sophia thought he knew, thought he recognized some ghost of her father's face, in the curve of her cheekbone. Then he laughed, a dry, wheezing sound. "Famous, yes. Bring us wine, little mouse. The Barolo, 2001. And don't drop it. Your hands are shaking so badly, I'm afraid you'll break our crystal." She'd survived the first test. Sophia's hands shook as she climbed the curved staircase to the mezzanine with the $2,000 bottle. Each step felt like walking toward a cliff edge, knowing she had to jump. Salvatore sat at the head of an oval table, his cane propped against his chair. Dante sat to his right, posture relaxed but eyes alert. Rocco, Salvatore's consigliere, occupied another seat, an older man with a face like a clenched fist. Sophia approached with small, careful steps. "Your wine, sir." "Open it," Salvatore commanded. Her hands fumbled with the corkscrew, playing up her nervousness. Then, as the screw bit into the cork, muscle memory took over, the product of hours spent training with Enzo in the basement of the basement bait shop. The shaking stopped. Her movements became fluid, economical. The cork slid free with barely a whisper. A professional pour, too professional. Dante's eyes narrowed slightly. He'd noticed. Damn it, Sophia thought, too smooth. "You're Italian?" Salvatore asked, switching to accented English. "Yes, sir, my grandmother was, at least." "Where from?" "Naples, sir." The lie came smoothly. Salvatore scoffed, waving a hand dismissively. "Naples, noisy people. All singers and thieves, no discipline." Sophia felt her jaw tighten involuntarily. Something about the casual dismissal struck a nerve. She forced herself to relax. Salvatore leaned forward, switching to standard Italian. "Do you understand this? Or are you just an American girl with a vowel at the end of her name?" "I understand a little, signor," Sophia replied in deliberately broken Italian, fumbling the grammar. At least you try." Salvatore turned away, already losing interest. Sophia began to back away from the table, ready to fade into the background again. Then Salvatore switched languages one more time. But it wasn't Italian. It wasn't even standard Sicilian. It was the language of ghosts. The ancient tongue of the mountain villages near Corleone. Words that hadn't been common since before Sophia was born. The specific dialect spoken only by the inner families. The language her mother had sung to her as lullabies. "Talia sta pisciota, Rocco," Salvatore said, grinning at his consigliere like a wolf showing teeth. "Bella facci, ma occhi vacanti, comuna picura cal aspetta u masidaru, putissimo pertala a villa, coda nu leto prinu pica, poi la scartamu como munizza." "Look at this girl, Rocco. Pretty face, but empty eyes, like a sheep waiting for the butcher. We could take her back to the villa. She'd warm a bed for a while. Then we'd discard her like garbage." The words hit Sophia like a physical blow. Not because of the vulgarity, she'd heard worse, but because of what they represented. Picura. Sheep. That's what her father had called. The Morettis. They treat people like sheep to be slaughtered. Giovanni Valenti had told her when she was 10. Never forget what they are, Pichirid. Never let them make you into a sheep. And now this man, this monster who'd murdered her entire family, was using her mother's language to call her exactly that. Something inside Sophia broke. Not the careful persona she'd built, not the waitress mask or the invisible girl routine. Something deeper, something that had been sleeping for 20 years, buried under trauma and survival instinct. Her father's daughter woke up, and she was done being afraid. Sophia stopped walking. Her hands, which had been trembling with fear, went completely still. She turned back toward the table. The smart move, the safe move, was to keep walking, to pretend she hadn't understood, to stay invisible. But Sophia Valenti had never been good at playing it safe. She looked directly at Don Salvatore Moretti. The fear evaporated from her face like morning mist. Her posture changed, shoulders back, chin lifted, every inch of her suddenly radiating a confidence that belonged to someone else. Someone who'd grown up in a villa overlooking the Mediterranean. Someone who'd been taught that Valentis never bowed. The room fell silent. Even the security personnel looked up, sensing something catastrophically wrong. Dante's hand moved slightly toward his jacket, where Sophia knew he kept a pistol. And Sophia opened her mouth and spoke in perfect, flawless ancient Sicilian, the dialect of the inner families, the language of blood oaths and vendetta. Apicura che servivi, cida calfua, lupu quanu dormi, Don Salvatore, e l'ospiti, ca insalta, upani petruni, mancia soteneri, e la mattina. The sheep that survives is the one that watches the wolf sleep, Don Salvatore. And a guest who insults the host's bread eats ashes in the morning. The sound of shattering china was deafening in the sudden silence. Rocco's fork hit his plate, then the floor, spinning like a coin dropped in a tomb. The security guards reached inside their jackets, hands closing on weapons, bodies tensing for violence. Dante froze mid-breath, staring at the waitress, like she'd just pulled off a mask to reveal something impossible. But none of that mattered, because Don Salvatore Moretti, the man who'd killed his first victim at 15, who'd built an empire on the bodies of anyone who challenged him, who'd seen everything and feared nothing, looked like he'd seen a ghost rise from a grave he'd personally filled. His mouth hung open, color drained from his face, his hand trembled as he set down his wine glass, the crystal chattering against the table. When he spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. "Tu, who are you?" And Sophia realized with crystal clarity that she'd just destroyed 3 years of perfect cover with 5 seconds of pure, unfiltered rage. The mask was off. The ghost was visible. And the war she'd been planning for 20 years had just started ahead of schedule. I need to get the antipasto," she gasped, the frightened waitress persona returning too late, far too late. She turned and ran. Not a quick walk, not a dignified retreat. She sprinted for the stairs, her sensible work shoes slapping against the marble. "Stop her." Salvatore's voice boomed through the restaurant. His cane slammed against the table, shattering a wineglass. "Per Tamila, Sabitu, bring her to me now." Sophia crashed through the kitchen doors, nearly sprawling as staff jumped out of her way. She knew every inch of this kitchen, every entrance and exit. She hit the back door at the exact right angle, and it opened without triggering the alarm. Rain cold, miserable, perfect. She ran left toward the street, her work shoes splashing through puddles. Behind her, the door crashed open again. "Stop," Dante's voice echoed off the brick walls. Sophia saw her escape, a chain-link fence at the end of the alley, maybe 8 feet tall. She hit it at full speed, grabbed the metal links, and climbed. A hand grabbed her ankle. Dante stood there, rain plastering his dark hair to his forehead. His hand was locked around her ankle like a vice. "Who are you?" he demanded. "What the hell was that? How do you know that dialect?" For a heartbeat they stared at each other. Sophia hanging on the fence, Dante gripping her ankle, rain pouring down between them. "I'm the girl your father tried to kill 20 years ago," she said, her voice steady despite the rain and fear. "I'm the reason he'll never sleep soundly again. And if he catches me, Dante Moretti, He won't just kill me. He'll burn this entire city down to hide what I know. She ripped her ankle free, hauled herself over the fence, and dropped to the other side. She allowed herself one last look back. Dante stood at the fence, rain streaming down his face, his hands still reaching toward where she'd been. "You don't know what you've started," he called out. "I know exactly what I've started," Sophia shouted back. "I've been waiting 20 years to start it." Then she ran into the rain-soaked streets of Manhattan, disappearing into the night like smoke, like a ghost, like a girl who should have died 2 decades ago. Sophia didn't stop running until her lungs burned and her legs threatened to give out. She zigzagged through Tribeca, following a route she'd planned years ago, but hoped she'd never need. Finally, 6 blocks from Il Giglio, she ducked into a 24-hour laundromat and collapsed in a back corner, hidden behind rumbling dryers. Stupid, 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 stupid. 3 years of perfect invisibility, destroyed. Because of an insult. Because an old man had called her a sheep. Her emergency phone buzzed. "They are looking. Leave the apartment now. Do not go back." Enzo. Of course he already knew. Sophia destroyed the phone and headed for Red Hook. There was an old associate there, one of her father's former captains. A man who owed the Valenti family a blood debt that death hadn't canceled. The docks at Red Hook were a graveyard of rusted shipping containers and skeletal cranes. Sophia approached a dilapidated bait shop at the edge of Pier 41. It looked abandoned, but she knew better. She knocked the pattern. Tap, tap, pause, tap, tap, tap. The door cracked open. A shotgun barrel appeared. "We're closed," a voice rasped like chains on concrete. "Amareja auta, masi, bisi, unmizakanu," Sophia said. "The tide is high, but the fish aren't biting." The shotgun lowered. Enzo Maldini stood there. 70 years old, weathered, covered in faded tattoos. He'd smuggled her out of Sicily 20 years ago, wrapped in a rug on a fishing trawler. "Dio mio, Sophia. What happened?" "I saw Salvatore. I spoke the dialect. I blew my cover." Enzo cursed in Sicilian. "You answered the devil in his own tongue. Now the whole pack will be hunting. I need the package, the one Papa left." Enzo hesitated. "It's suicide. If you open that box, you become the target again. I'm already the target. Give it to me." He pulled up a floorboard and retrieved a steel briefcase. Inside was everything her father had died to protect. Offshore account codes, sleeper agent contacts, and most importantly, the Libros. Rosso, the Red Book, her father's insurance policy. Evidence of every major crime committed by the 5 families in 30 years. Nuclear leverage. "There's a boat at the pier," Enzo said. "Get to Jersey, I'll hold them." The skylight exploded. Glass rained down like diamonds. Black ropes dropped from the ceiling. Flashbang grenades clattered across the floor. The world turned white. Through the chaos, Sophia saw tactical operators descending. 6 of them, maybe more, in professional gear with night vision and suppressed weapons. Enzo roared and fired blindly. Boom! One shadow went down. Then 3 red laser dots converged on Enzo's chest. "No!" Sophia screamed. Thip, thip, thip. Enzo jerked backward, 3 holes appearing in his chest. He slumped over the counter, dead. Sophia grabbed the briefcase and ran for the back door as bullets chewed up the floor where she'd been standing. She burst onto the rotting pier, sprinting toward a small fishing boat bobbing in the chop. "Nowhere to run, Principessa," a voice shouted. Sophia skidded to a halt. Standing between her and the boat was Dante Moretti, alone, soaking wet in his ruined suit, holding a handgun at his side. "You led them to me," Sophia spat. "I didn't lead anyone. I came alone. Look at them." The tactical team was pouring out of the bait shop, raising their weapons, not just at her, but at Dante too. "Drop the weapon, Missouri ready. We have orders to clean the whole slate." Dante looked confused for a fraction of a second. It's a coup, you idiot, Sophia yelled. Duck. She reached into her apron pocket and pulled out the flashbang she'd swiped from the floor when the first soldier went down. She pulled the pin and lobbed it at the tactical team. Bang, move. Sophia screamed, grabbing Dante by the lapel and dragging him toward the edge of the pier. What are you doing, saving your life so I can kill you later? She shoved him hard. Dante toppled backward off the pier, splashing into the freezing Hudson River. Sophia clutched the briefcase and jumped in right after him. Bullets ripped into the water above them, but the dark current swallowed them whole, pulling them under the pier into darkness, into an alliance neither had planned. They surfaced under the pier, gasping and freezing. The water was bone-chillingly cold, thick with oil and debris. Quiet, Sophia hissed as heavy boots stomped overhead. She led Dante to a maintenance ladder and up into a storm drain tunnel beneath the West Side Highway. Relatively dry, almost warm compared to the water. They collapsed on a concrete ledge, both gasping for breath. Those men were wearing Russian tactical gear, Dante said. American accents, high-end mercenaries. Not your father, Sophia said. He wants to kill me himself, and they tried to kill you too. Someone wants a war. If I die and the last Valenti dies, Dante said slowly, who benefits? Someone inside. Sophia said, who knew where you were going? Who knew you were tracking me? Dante's jaw clenched. 3 people, my father, my head of security Thorn, and Rocco. Your father's consigliere, Sophia said. The man who laughed when Salvatore called me a sheep. He remembers the old days when the Morettis were kings. He thinks you're soft. Thinks your father is too old. Maybe he wants the crown. Dante stood up, water dripping from his suit. We have a problem. We're natural enemies. I should kill you and take that briefcase. You should kill me and take your chances. But, Sophia said, but if we do that, Rocco wins. He takes the throne, kills us both eventually, and consolidates power. Dante extended his hand. Truce, until we survive, until we expose Rocco. I help you get safe. You don't release the book. Sophia looked at that hand. A Moretti, offering peace to a Valenti. It defied a century of blood and betrayal. I don't shake hands with Morettis, she said. But I won't kill you tonight. Lead the way. Dante led her to a loft in Chelsea, but instead of a bunker, Sophia found walls covered in paintings. Huge, chaotic, beautiful works of art. Violent swirls of red and black. Faces screaming in silence. You really do paint, she whispered. It keeps the ghosts quiet, Dante said. He pulled out a first aid kit. Sit, your leg is bleeding. As he bandaged her scraped calf with surprising gentleness, Sophia studied him. Why did you save me on the pier, really? Because at the restaurant, when my father insulted you, I flinched. I hated it. I've always hated this life. I didn't choose it any more than you did. We're both prisoners, Sophia said softly. Just children cleaning up our father's blood. Dante looked up at her, his face inches from hers. If we get out of this, I'm leaving. Taking my money and disappearing, maybe. Dante, Sophia interrupted urgently. The briefcase, look at the handle. A tiny red lead pulsed on the case. A tracker. How long has crash? The skylight exploded. Tear gas canisters clattered in. The door blew inward with a shaped charge. Through the smoke stepped Rocco, dragging Don Salvatore disoriented. Coughing, looking frailer than Sophia had ever seen him. Come out, Dante. Rocco's voice boomed. Introduce your girlfriend to your father properly. Sophia pulled on a gas mask Dante threw her. He's framing you, making Salvatore think you betrayed him. We have to end this, Dante said, checking his gun. 6 rounds, 8 of them. Sophia stood up, hands raised, the briefcase visible. Sophia, no, but she was already walking into the open. Hold fire, Rocco grinned. The waitress returns. Don Salvatore looked up, saw Sophia, saw Dante emerge behind her. You're with her. With the Valenti. He told you I kidnapped her. didn't he, Don Salvatore? Sophia said, he told you your son betrayed you. But he hired the Russians. He tried to kill me at the pier. He's making his move while blaming Dante. Rocco screamed. She's manipulating him. You want the book, Sophia said, lifting the briefcase. The Libro Rosso, my father's insurance policy. Give it to me, Rocco demanded, his gun trained on her head. First, let me show you page 42. The list of your skimming operations, every payment you diverted from the Morettis for 20 years. Rocco's eye twitched, a micro-expression of panic. What's skimming? Salvatore asked dangerously. Enough. Rocco's hand trembled. Kill them all. Wait, Sophia said. I'll prove it. She knelt, spun the combination dials. 122598. The date her house burned. Click. She opened the case. It was empty. Rocco stared, mouth hanging open. Where is it? Sophia looked up, and for the first time she smiled. Terrible and beautiful and triumphant. I burned it 3 years ago. Every page, every document. All of it turned to ash. It was a lie. She digitized everything. But Rocco didn't need to know that. The leverage isn't in papers you can steal, Rocco. It's in knowledge, in memory, in the truth. And what I know about you, your decades of betrayal could bring down your entire empire. You're lying, Rocco screamed, raising his gun to execute her. Bang, the shot didn't come from Dante. Rocco stiffened, looking down at the red flower, blooming on his chest. He turned slowly. Don Salvatore stood there, his arm extended, a small .22 pistol in his trembling hand. The ankle piece Rocco had missed. You stole from me, Salvatore whispered, his voice shaking with fury. From my family, you swore an oath, Rocco. Bang! The second shot took Rocco between the eyes. He fell backward, dead. The tactical team, seeing their payday dead, immediately began backing toward exits. Leave, Dante roared. Get out. They vanished into the night. Silence returned. Salvatore stood over Rocco's corpse, looking like he'd aged a decade. His legs buckled. Dante caught his father. Papa, are you okay? I'm old, I'm tired. I just killed my oldest friend. He walked slowly to Sophia. For a long moment they studied each other, the old king and the ghost. You lied about the book, Salvatore said. I bluffed, like you taught me. I never taught you anything. But I learned from you anyway. Salvatore nodded. He reached into his jacket and pulled out his gold signet ring, looked at it, then slipped it back on. What you did tonight, exposing Rocco, warning my son, saving our lives when you could have walked away. The omerta is clear. A debt is owed. He extended his hand, not to shake, but to help her stand. Sophia looked at that scarred hand belonging to the man who destroyed her family. Every instinct screamed to refuse. But she was tired. So tired of rage and hiding and carrying 20 years of hatred. She took his hand. The feud ends tonight, Salvatore said. The Valentas died 20 years ago. You are Sophia Rossi, a waitress, nothing more. Understood. Sophia looked at Dante, who watched with desperate hope. She made a choice. Yes, she said. Just a waitress. Salvatore studied her face. My son needs a good woman, but if you ever speak that dialect in public again. His eyes narrowed, but his mouth twitched. I will personally send back every dish at your dish. Restaurant? Dante laughed and pulled Sophia close. As they led Salvatore out, the old Don stopped beside her. Your father was a worthy enemy. He'd be proud of you tonight. Thank you, Sophia whispered. The book, did you really burn it? Sophia smiled slightly. What do you think, Don Salvatore? The old man laughed. I think you're either the most honest person I've met or the most dangerous liar, and I'm not sure which terrifies me more. Good, Sophia said. Fear keeps you alive. Veru, la picciota et matu. True, the girl has learned. 6 months later, Il Giglio reopened to tremendous fanfare. The grand reopening drew politicians, celebrities, power brokers. But real power gathered at table 1 on the mezzanine. Dante sat at the head, looking relaxed and genuinely happy for the first time in his life. Salvatore sipped his Barolo, content. "The service has improved," Salvatore commented. "I have a new manager," Dante said, his eyes lighting up. Sophia appeared at the top of the stairs, not in a waitress uniform, but in a stunning red backless dress. Her natural dark chestnut hair fell to her shoulders. She moved with confidence, with grace. "With the bearing of a queen, gentlemen," she said, resting her hand on Dante's shoulder. "Everything to your liking, perfect amor," Dante said, kissing her hand with genuine affection. Salvatore looked up. "The wine is excellent, but the bread is cold. A test, small, playful, but a test." Sophia leaned down close to his ear and whispered in perfect Sicilian, "Mansia u panica, ta, datu vecchiu lupu, oa cuca ti metia dieta." Eat the bread you're given, old wolf, or the cook will put you on a diet. Salvatore froze, then threw his head back and roared with laughter. "She's terrifying. Keep her, Dante. Don't let this one escape." "I don't plan to," Dante said, squeezing her hand. Sophia moved through the room, greeting guests, playing her role perfectly. The reformed waitress who'd caught a powerful man's eye. The perfect cover. Because Sophia Valenti saw everything, knew everything, remembered everything. She'd told Salvatore she'd burned the book. Part of that was true. She'd destroyed the physical copy, but she'd spent 3 years photographing every page, memorizing every name, backing up the information in encrypted locations around the world. The book might be ash, but the knowledge lived on, and knowledge was the only weapon that never ran out of bullets. Later that night, Sophia stood at the penthouse window watching the city. Dante joined her, slipping an arm around her waist. "Any regrets?" he asked. "About the book, about letting my father live?" "No regrets," she said. "It was mostly true. I chose life over revenge, building something new over destroying what was old." But as she stood there, her mind was already working 3 moves ahead. The feud with the Morettis might be over, but there were other families, other enemies, other debts to be repaid. And when the time was right, when she'd built her power base and secured her position, well, that was a question for another day. For now, Sophia Moretti smiled and accepted congratulations from guests who had no idea they were praising a ghost, a girl who should have died in a fire, a Valenti who'd learned that the best revenge wasn't destruction, it was resurrection. The sheep that survives is the one that watches the wolf sleep. And Sophia had been watching for 20 years. Now finally, it was time for the wolves to wake up and find themselves surrounded